very good afternoon. So, first of all, we have our CEO here, Syafiq, respected colleagues from my faculty, from other faculties, I think. And we have some of my students here. I think a teacher should feel very proud to have 4 students, 4 or 5 students here. Although that many, 6. Thank you very much. But I think it shows how sincere they are. So I think we have a good future in our hands. I believe. Anyway, is my voice clear? Can you hear me? Okay, good. So the reason I'm talking about this topic is because the first day I came in, that's what Dr. Sakina asked me to prepare for. She requested me, not Dr. Sakina, sorry, Dr. Zaida, within that. She said, well, she knew, of course, first of all, she knew about my background. I did my master's in comparative philosophy with my ethics. Then, of course, she knew my association with the previous chairman of UNITA, Prof. Dr. Aziuddin Ahmad, who was very much keen about this kind of discourse. And of course, now UNITA is very much, I believe, committed and interested to take this discourse seriously about virtues. Happiness is my addition, but mainly about virtues and how it's connected to education. That's why 3 years ago they switched their mission from producing just marketable students to producing wholesome graduates. So I think that's a big commitment on the part of UNITA. I have my mother here, is a lecturer from UITM. I don't think you are. I think as an academic, experienced academic, I don't think this is very common among universities to explicitly say that their mission is to produce wholesome graduates.
Oh, yeah.
No, right?
You're right.
I hope you don't just say that because you're my mom. So anyway.
But the national education philosophy mentions it, right? But there hasn't been much implementation.
That's right. And I don't know about in the past, but only the recent blueprint, only they mention it more clearly. They want this balance of ilmu and akhlaq and so on. A more deeper dimension of human development. Okay. Oh, good. So just to get your mind settled about what this talk is about, is it won't be something too philosophical. It's not just an intellectual exercise. It's not something that for me to have fun with. Not historical. It won't be a historical account about concepts and so on. I won't just give a series of quotations. And it's not my personal attempt to get a higher KPI or promotion or anything like that. In fact, the reason I chose to come here is because of this. I chose to leave my work where I could drive 10 minutes to work for this longer, almost 1 hour drive to work because of this. That's why I'm very delighted to know the top management here is committed to this. So what this presentation I will attempt to offer is a kind of a solution, basically, to a fundamental problem. I know this is a bit wordy, through some kind of framework, a thinking framework, so that all of you, including students, can actually do something and not feel helpless about the kind of problem that we're facing in the world today. So, but in order to appreciate the solution, any kind of solution, you must understand what is the problem that we're trying to solve. Is it the political problem that is the most, that should be of our most serious concern? Is it just something economic? Is it just, I don't know, is it just, something on the physical aspect of things, something that we see? Or is there something deeper? I'm inclined to think there is something deeper. And this is what has been articulated by many thinkers and philosophers and intellectuals worldwide. Not only in the Islamic tradition, but from other religious traditions, from the Chinese tradition, from the Indian tradition also. I've met some of these intellectuals.
And all of them, there is a kind of consensus that the kind of problem or challenge we are facing has to do with something inside. So I will deliberate more after this. And as a result of this problem, a bit more, as a result of this problem that I will explain more about, there is great suffering in the souls, in the hearts and the minds of many men and women around the world. So even if a nation claims that they are a developed nation, a first world nation, there are still great inner suffering that the people experiences.
And this is reflected in the cases of, crime and suicide rates, for instance. Yes. A brief outline of my table of content. I will go. The first part there will talk about the problem. What is the problem that we're facing? Why is this important? And what do we mean by when we talk about virtues and happiness? And what would be the practical implication as a result of this discussion? And what are some strategies and action plan that we can execute at the individual and collective level? So why is this important? This is a quote by a renowned Malaysian philosopher, thinker. He was one of the founders of UKM, University Kebangsaan Malaysia. And this remark is based on years of contemplation and research, and based on what people from many other nations and traditions are saying also. He said, one of the greatest challenge, not necessarily to a particular group of religious tradition, but greatest challenge, very general, that has surreptitiously arisen in our age is the challenge of knowledge. And remember, knowledge is something internal, not external. So that's why I said it's now something inside. This challenge, this problem that we're facing. We need not against ignorance. Masalah yang kita hadapi ini bukan sekadar jahil, kejahilan, but knowledge as conceived and disseminated throughout the world by Western civilization. Okay, we need to clarify what this means, because otherwise Steve won't talk to me again. Knowledge as conceived and disseminated throughout the world by Western civilization. So we mean by this, what Professor Atas mean by this, I think we should finish reading first. Knowledge whose nature has become problematic because it has lost its true purpose due to being unjustly conceived, and has thus brought about chaos in man's life instead of peace and justice. Knowledge which has for the first time in history brought chaos to three kingdoms of nature: animal, vegetable, and mineral. So I think this is the actual, the real problem that we ought to try to address at all levels, at the individual level, right to the top university and up to the governments. And when we say this, we are not saying it out of a confrontational manner, as if we have to, be at war with the West. But what we mean by that, we should realize that a lot of the interpretations of present-day knowledge is understood through the consciousness and experience of Western civilization, through how the Western man perceives reality. So, and what it does, it claims universality. Maknanya, whatever that we wrote, we write, whatever that we interpret, whatever that we say, this is true for everyone. But it's not necessarily true. Because before the dominance of Western civilization, the Western worldview, there were other equally valid worldviews and civilizations which has given their own interpretations of things and have created nations and civilizations out of it. I don't know whether this is digestible for you all at this stage. But it's not a simple problem. Therefore, the solution cannot be so simple. At least we can agree that the problem is not simple. And it takes generations, in fact, to solve this. And Professor Altas, when he said this, he doesn't expect people, academics, lecturers, intellectuals, governments to solve this in a single year like this. It takes generations. And this is supported by someone like Jeffrey Sachs, a famous economist, prominent economist from America. Supported, like what Altas said earlier, supported by what this man is saying. He's saying that we live in an age of stark contradiction. The world enjoys technologies of unimaginable sophistication. Yeah, this 1 billion people don't have enough to eat each day. We have great economic advancement, yet relentlessly destroying the natural environment in the process. There's great economic development, as conventionally measured, yet along the way there's new crises of obesity, smoking, diabetes, depression, and other ills of modern life. Jeffrey Sachs, the former chairman of UNITA, who co-wrote this book, Human Governance, with the current chairman of UNITA, Prof. Arfa, he reduced the current situation as, in one sentence, as there is a crisis of being human. People don't know what it means to be human again. Apa erti nak menjadi seorang manusia ni? And sometimes it's not that we don't know, but our interpretation of man has been reduced to what is explained by modern science, by modern psychology, by archaeology. Another famous intellectual from China, in fact the foremost expert of Confucius tradition in the present world, his name Professor Tu Weiming. He came to Malaysia before, had the privilege to attend this lecture. Same thing. How to be a real human being has become an urgent problem for humanity. It's reflected in the writings of American, contemporary American Western scholars as well. They are struggling in the education system. Harry Lewis, former dean of Harvard University, Center 1, excellence without a soul. Harvard had produced excellent people but no soul. Meaning, they might be graduating for Harvard, but they could commit some serious crimes in society. They might cheat people, right? The other one, excellent sheep, the miseducation of the American elite. Former professor of Yale. We're losing our minds, rethinking American higher education. So there's a big trend, even in the Western world, to relook, re-examine, rethink many of the ideas, many of the philosophy that they have been applying for a very long time. But this one I got from Khazanah Megatrends. Check why we notice this. Khazanah Megatrends is where the elite people in Malaysia or from this region converge. And they acknowledge there's a problem connecting with being human, also ethics. So what do we mean by virtues and happiness? Defining something very important. Having a clear definition gives us clarity. My students here who decided to join this session, I think they found some kind of clarity. That's why they come here on their own accord. I didn't promise them any grades, good grades. The first thing I stressed in my class study skills was on definitions. Do you really understand important terms, key concepts that governs your life? Whether you realize it or not, there are concepts, terms that governs your life, that decides what you do on a daily basis, how you govern an institution, a nation. Are you conscious of how you think? That's why I thought it is important to clarify what we mean by this. Connecting. Talking about virtues You cannot run away from talking about what does it mean to be human. Because one, of course, is a fundamental crisis. But two, we cannot, like I said, we cannot assume we understand what it means. But in the world views of the Asian people, meaning the people who subscribe to religions, Islam, Christianity, Confucianism, Hinduism, Buddhism, we share a similar conception of what it means to be human. Kita macam ada kesepakatan lah tentang apa yang kita fahami sebagai diri insan, diri manusia ni, apa itu. And this concept, this understanding goes beyond what is interpreted or understood in modern biology, in not neuroscience, which is becoming a major interpreter of what it means to be human. Our forefathers, I think they knew better what it means to be human. That's why they caused less destruction to the world than we do today. I'm not saying you, but people out there. So in Islam, for instance, we affirm there's not only the physical body, but there's also the soul. And there's one powerful definition, al-hayawan al-naqid, the rational speaking animal that possesses a soul. There's a definition. In the Eastern tradition, you look at Confucianism, Buddhism, all this implies a spiritual reality, that we are not just the physical self. Even in the Western tradition, people like the ancient philosophers like Aristotle and Plato, they affirm there is a soul. That's why this term psychology originally meant science of the soul. And that book there is by Professor Alatas. He wrote to clarify what's the position of Islam on the meaning of man. Nature of man and the psychology of the human soul. I think this is an indispensable book if you want to teach psychology or even education. But of course, you're not required, even the lectures, you're not required to understand some of these things too deeply. But understand at the basic level enough so that you don't deny there is such thing as a soul. Because that will affect even how you teach your students. I'm not saying all lecturers are doing this. I'm sure experienced lecturers like Dr. Joe, Dr. Abdullah here, we can sense they are very conscious of their self, and it's reflected in their attitude, character, and work. And even, in fact, all my colleagues here, it's a very positive kind of character going on. Sometimes you cannot articulate it. Oh, this. Okay. Phew, I'm free. Freedom. Now I do know. Okay. Now we can truly understand what virtues mean. Once we understand what human being is. Steve, you're not angry at me, right? I said what the West. Well, of course, this word is English, virtues. So it has a Latin roots, virtus. Valor, referring to moral perfection. But in all of these traditions, major world religions, they have a common definition. Discernment of mind and good character. Theory, practice. Discernment means having the ability to judge something, whether something is true or false. Intellectual discernment. So, okay. And good character is a result of discernment of mind. You cannot have wholesome, graduate, good human beings without having some kind of intellectual training, if I can put it that way. And this is the assumption of all of these great religions when the Christian tradition talk about cardinal virtues. There are four main mother virtues that they talk about. You know, not all virtues are the same. There's a place for everything. They talk about wisdom, temperance, courage, and the culmination of that is justice. Originally, this discussion started by the ancient Greek philosophers
But it's very Islamic if you think about it. And it's not surprising because there's been a study that indicated these great ancient philosophers, Plato, Aristotle, they were influenced by the students of the earlier prophets. They were influenced by some kind of revealed teachings before them. In Islam, wisdom is hikmah, temperance is naifah, courage is shaja'ah, justice adil. The Prophet, peace be upon him, is the best manifestation of these virtues. And later on, scholars like Al-Ghazali, they deliberated, they wrote about this, they explained about this comprehensively. And you will find similar discussions. Christian tradition, there's a famous philosopher, Thomas Aquinas. He talks about that too. Hindu tradition, this concept dharma corresponds to virtue. Buddhism, I didn't manage to do my homework. Confucius, definitely there is the corresponding meaning or term to virtue. Okay, now we know what it means. But how do we cultivate it? How do we possess these virtues in ourselves? There's a method, of course. And education is supposed to cultivate virtues. It's supposed to actualize virtues in the self. So, education, and there will be an implication on what we mean by education. But before we go there, let's see what they say, what these great traditions say about the cultivation of virtues. Macam mana nak membuahkan perilaku yang terpuji dalam diri. First of all, I don't claim I have all these virtues. I'm still in the learning process. My mother knows that very well. But I'm fortunate enough to be in contact with some authorities on the subject matter, that I get a sense of how it ought to be, how it ought to be cultivated. So there are at least three processes here. It involves learning, training of the intellect in deliberate thinking, and habituation. All these traditions say this. In Islam, we basically say it's the inculcation of adab, disciplining of the mind, body, and soul. And adab is not just etiquette, in the external sense, as if Adab has a very comprehensive meaning. It is something. It is first, it has to be based on the right knowledge of some fundamental things in life, and Islam teaches that, and then acting accordingly. That is adab. Disciplining mind, body, and soul. So it involves disciplining the mind, adab. To cultivate virtues, to inculcate adab, involves some kind of intellectual training. Of course, for our forefathers, these things, it happened naturally, of course, because the education then was not compartmentalized, and it's still reflected in the beings, in the personalities of the more senior friends that we have here. And it's connected to ethics. Ethics is a science. Ilmu akhlak is a fardu ain in Islam. And this fardu ain doesn't stop at secondary level. It has to continue even at the university, because otherwise, how do you answer serious ethical questions, right? In modern life, for instance. Harvard, they have a course called moral reasoning. How to reason morally, on major issues in life. It's a fardu ain. Fardu ain is food for the soul. By the way, from other tradition, fardu ain is a classification of knowledge that the Muslims give to referring to something that is obligatory for every individual to learn, because it's food for the soul, sustenance for the soul. And fardu kifayah is something obligatory for a select group of people in the community. So I think even in our case, for example in UNITA, we don't necessarily need to say that we're doing Fardu Ain, but at least have some kind of component or some kind of compulsory subjects that reflects this, that would we give a moral purpose to students, right? Some kind of intellectual and moral guidance. Because, and furthermore, we have to remember, in the past, very important, in the past, there was never a separation between good character and intelligence. Now there is in education system. If you are the best graduates from the greatest universities in the West, Oxford, Harvard, all these things, you don't necessarily need to have good character, isn't it? And that's very strange to us, because for us, an educated man, a learned man, also means he has good character. An educated person is a good person. There's no contradiction, there's no dichotomy. Now there is. The purpose of virtues and being good is happiness. This is what all of us want. Kenapa kita nak jadi baik? Kau nak pakai, nak sejahtera, aman dan damai dalam diri. The purpose of virtues, cultivating these traits, for instance, is to be happy. And happiness is possible to attain. Never think it's not possible to attain. If you think it's not possible to attain, meaning you're following a new line of thinking from the modern world. Happiness is not subjective. It's not something momentary, something you have it, sometimes you have it, sometimes you don't, sometimes you have it. No. Only when you listen to your favorite music you get it. No. Once it's there, it stays there. For the Muslims, it has to do with certainty, yaqeen, of the ultimate truth, of our destiny. The more certain we are because of the knowledge that we have, and when we act according to it, that's when we have the end. Christianity have similar conception. Felicitas, eudaimonia. It refers to the well-being of the soul. Same goes to Confucianism, Hinduism, Buddhism. I should have asked. Buddhism, they spoke about, I think almost the purpose of Buddhism is to cease suffering, inner suffering. To be happy. So imagine some relevant sources that you might be interested. This is the great scholar, luminary from the Islamic tradition, Al-Ghazali, Thomas Aquinas from the Christian tradition. Is still available, these books. Hindu, Confucianism, Nicomachean Aristotle, Nicomachean Ethics.